Hey everybody, today I'm taking a look at Akropolis, which is a 2 to 4 player tile placement board game designed by Jules Massoud and published by Gigamic. This one takes around 25 minutes to play on average. Before I get into my review of Akropolis, I want to give a shout out to the show sponsor Kienda.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer here in the UK, and if you use my link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. But let's get into the review. Okay, so Akropolis is going to look like this when it's set up, where you're going to have 11 piles of these face-down tiles, and these piles are going to be as tall as the number of players plus one. So here we have a 3-player game where each of these stacks is 4 tiles tall. You're also going to have this central display of tiles which are available for drafting from the get-go. You're going to have a supply of these stone cubes, and each player is going to have their starting city area that looks like this, as well as a stone cube or more depending on the turn order. So the first player is going to have 1 cube, second player is going to have 2, and so on. Also, the first player is going to have control of the first player marker. Okay, so the turn structure in this game is super simple, where the starting player is going to have the option to draft one of these tiles. Now, they can always take the first tile in this row for free, but if they want to start skipping over tiles to get to maybe more juicy ones or ones more inviting to them, then they can start spending stones. So for example, I could take this one for free here, but if I wanted this one, I would have to spend a stone to skip over this tile like so. But let's just say I wanted this one, therefore I'd pick it up and I'd add it somewhere on my starting tile. So you can always place it a flat edge to flat edge, but let's just say, for example, I chose to put it here like this. And once the first player has placed the tile, it's going to go on to the next player. So let's just say they wanted this one, and then the third player maybe spent a stone to skip over that one and took this one. And then it'll be back to the first player, where let's just say they spent a stone and picked up this one like so. Again, placing it on their board like so. At the end of each round, there's going to be 1 tile remaining, where that's going to shuffle all the way to the edge. Then you're going to pick up a new bunch of tiles here and start again from scratch with a new starting player. Okay, so I've advanced the game a bit here just to show you what your town might look like as the game develops, and to give you an idea about what you're actually trying to achieve in this game. So as you can see, when you are drafting these tiles have different information on them. The first of which is the district type. So I believe there are 5 different colours here. You've got these blue residential buildings, you've got these green gardens, you've got these orangey outposts, you've got these temples, and you also have these merchant buildings like so. So those are the districts, and you also have the plazas, which are of the same colours, but they are shown using these stars. Now, how the scoring works is that all these different districts are going to score in different ways, and at the end of the game, if you are abiding by those restrictions and conditions, you are going to multiply those scores by the amount of stars you have on display in your town. Okay, so let's take a look at how all the different districts work, and after that we can explain how the scoring is calculated. So the blue residential buildings, you simply want to create as big of a group as possible, and your biggest group is going to be what's going to be calculated for scoring at the end of the game. So you can see here my biggest blue block is this one here, which is fairly decent. The gardens, the green ones here, simply need to be on display anywhere. There's no other restrictions, so they're quite a simple one. These orange outposts need to have at least 1 face on the extremity of the board. So you can see this one here, this one is going off into the void, just like these ones here on the edge of your town. So again, you want to have them on the edges and not landlocked, which is a direct kind of contradiction to the temple tiles, the purple ones here. You want to have these completely surrounded by other tiles and have them landlocked. So these ones would be eligible for scoring, but this one would not, because again, you've got these 2 faces on display. And the yellow ones here, you want to have them isolated, so you don't want them touching any other yellow buildings. So this would be absolutely fine, as would this one, as would this one. Now you can also see, not only have I spread my bunch of tiles, I've also built vertically. Now you might want to do that for a number of reasons. The first of which is that it does increase your multipliers when it comes to scoring, again, which we'll talk about very shortly, but also it will allow you more stone. Because if you ever build vertically on top of these grey quarries, like so, For each of these hexes that you do overlap, you are going to take a stone from the supplier. So you can see there I overlapped 2 quarries, therefore I'll take 2 more stone into my supply. And these stone, of course, are not only great for skipping over tiles and to get to the tiles that you want for your town, but they'll also be worth a point each at the end of the game. So let's show you a couple of examples of how the endgame scoring is going to be calculated. And of course, this would happen after all the tiles have been used up. But I'm going to show you my current setup here to give those examples. So let's start with the yellows, because I think that's one of the easiest ones to do. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to count all the yellow stars from these plazas that you have on display. And they can be on display anywhere on the board. They do not need to abide any restrictions at all. So you can see here, I've got 4 yellow stars on display, and I have 3 actual merchant yellow buildings. And as long as they are abiding by the restrictions, and if you remember, the yellow ones have to be in isolation, which they are, so they're all going to be eligible for scoring. And then you're going to multiply those stars by the level that they're on. So this one's going to be 1, this is on level 2, so that's going to be a total of 1, 2, 3. This one's also on level 2, which is going to be 4, 5. So it's going to be 5 multiplied by 4 for a total of 20 points. And just to give another example, so you're sure about how this works, let's work out my blue residential building. So first off, I'm going to count how many stars I have. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 stars or blue stars on display. And again, I'm going to multiply that by my biggest group of those blue buildings, but bearing in mind the level they're on as well. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So it's going to be 13 times 4 for a total of 52 points. And of course, once you've worked out all the different categories and added up your spare stone, then the player with the most victory points at the end of the game will be the winner. Okay, so let's get in some thoughts on Akropolis. So you can see there this game is relatively straightforward. However, the puzzly aspect of the game really does shine through nicely. And I tend to love it when tile placement games have a 3D aspect to them, as this one does, because it adds a whole new dimension, literally, into the game. And one of the biggest things that I really enjoy about this game is the idea of when is the time to start building upwards, because a lot of the time you have to cover up things below where you are, and you have to weigh up the pros and cons of that. Additionally, you need to make sure that you are every so often covering up these quarry spaces, because that's going to give you a lot more flexibility when it comes to drafting what you want. Otherwise, you're going to be completely subservient to the to the first tile in the row there. So you always want to make sure you have a steady income of these stone cubes. I think that all the different scoring methods are simple enough to be digestible. You only need to really know them once, and you have a really handy little player reference sheet there if you forget how they work. But they're all very simple in their own right, but they all do kind of conflict with each other as you'd want. And I love the fact that you could really focus on, building up your residential buildings, for example. But if you're not getting the matching plaza tiles, then they're all going to be worth nothing. So I do love that kind of mixing between the two. You need to make sure that you're getting the, getting the districts down in the first place. But again, if they're not accompanying the matching plazas, then they're not going to be worth much at all. So maybe you want to take a more balanced approach. Maybe you want to try and almost like monopolize something by obtaining all those multipliers and really focusing on one of those aspects. The scarcity of the plaza tiles do add a lot of tension into the game, because if everybody is competing over the same plaza types, then inevitably it's going to be diluted. That points pool is going to be diluted, and you're going to be sharing, an equal amount of the spoils. However, if you find somebody is starting to run away with those multipliers, and maybe you've invested a bunch of that matching district, you might think, let's zigzag, let's change my strategy and focus on something else and start building on top of those other ones, because it's going to be worth me doing so, because I'm going to get those bigger multipliers anyway. However, you can't completely allow somebody to monopolize a certain type of plaza, because if they do, their multipliers are going to be absolutely, astronomical. And that's going to be difficult to make up for. So sometimes you're even forced to, almost hate draft at times, because you cannot afford your opponent to grab another one of those plazas and increase their multipliers. I think the choice of tile shape was a really good one because it makes the game feel different. A lot of tile placement games use, either hexes or squares, whatever. But the fact this one uses kind of these 3 connected hexes, it creates a lot of opportunity to, create platforms for you to build on top of. Because, you can have like 3 connecting quarries if there's just one hex out of the 3. By the time you add them together, that means you can put something else on top of it to increase those multipliers. The time investment for this game is absolutely unreal. It does literally take about 25 minutes to play. And considering the decision space and engagement of this game, I think that is right up there with the best of them. Most 25-minute games are, little throwaway games where you don't put that much thought space into it. This one is very thinky, very puzzly, and it does take such a succinct amount of time. So, that is massively impressive. And the same goes for the uptime. You're pretty much always involved in this game. Yes, you are waiting for other people to take their turn, but the turns are so snappy and their options are limited by the, the limited amount of tiles available. It does mean that you're not going to have those long, boring turns where you're sat waiting, and before you even place a tile, it's normally your turn again. So yeah, full props to the uptime and just general time investment of the game. Now, the player interaction mainly does come through the competition for the tiles. In fact, that's what it all does stem from. It's that turn angst of, please don't take that tile from me. I really need it. And, having your fingers crossed and hoping it works out in your favour. This is a very versatile game that scales extremely well. No matter what player count you play with, you're going to get the full experience and not going to get, again, disengaged from the game. And definitely very approachable for new gamers, as well as having enough going on here for more experienced gamers. And that is because there are actually 2 game modes that come, in the core box. You've got the one that I've explained already, and you also have this kind of variant where you can play with these even harder restrictions and other options to increase your scoring. So, for example, this one here, if you play with this variant, your blue residential buildings, if you have at least 10 of them in that group, you're going to get double the amount of points. Or if you have your yellow buildings next to the yellow plazas, or if your outposts have 3 or 4 empty sides, like this one here, on the edge of the board, you're going to score double the amount of points. Or even these ones here, if your temples are built on a higher level. So again, if you build on anything but the base level, you're going to score double the amount of points, and so on. Or this one here, it says if you score 2 points for your gardens, if they're next to a lake, which is essentially a gap in your board. The only minor nitpick I have with this game, and to be honest, it's not a personal issue, but it's something that could be said objectively, is the fact that due to the way that the tiles are just randomised and placed out, that can sometimes benefit some players more than others. For example, whenever you're the first player, there might always be all the great tiles right at the beginning, therefore you can just grab them for free or paying very little for them. Whereas when it's another player's turn, they might always have the great tiles right at the end of the row, therefore they're always having to spend that stone. And they might not have that stone, or they're essentially throwing points away to get the tiles that you got for free. So again, that's never really dampened my impression of the game. I think it's just so fast, so breezy, and rapid that I've never really let that bother me. But if you want to play a completely balanced game, then maybe that could work against you. The production for Akropolis is spot on. These tiles are lovely, nice, thick, chunky cardboard tiles that are, again, a joy to play with. Symbology, great, nice clear stars on them. And I'm colourblind as well, and I've got no issue at all with the colours that they've selected here. The stone cubes are just your standard Euro cubes. A nice little score sheet there that comes with the game, and of course the player aids as well. And that's pretty much everything you get in the box. But very happy, perfectly produced, and nice, good quality. Okay, so let's get into some final thoughts for Akropolis. Now, I am very impressed with this game, and it's kind of come from nowhere for me. I just picked this one up on a bit of a hunch, really, because I like simple tile placement games, especially when it has, again, this 3D dimension to it. Now, I don't think this game does anything terribly new. There's a lot of games that I'm going to directly compare this to, which I think you guys have probably already thought of. But what it does very well. There's nothing here that doesn't need to be here. Very streamlined. Every one of the different methods that the districts score in are so easy to understand, and there's no convolution or unnecessary complication with the game at all. A real perfect filler, especially considering the amount of time it takes, because again, this genuinely does take 25 minutes, which again is definitely one of the strongest aspects of the gameplay. I love the tension of the draft, the use of the stone, needing stone because gives you flexibility, but to do that, you're going to have to build on top of existing tiles. You need to lay that foundation down so that you can build on top of them, so you're not covering up other symbols. Yeah, a ton of decision space here for that short time frame. So this game inevitably is going to be compared to some of the more popular tile placement games out there, because there is a lot of crossover between them. The games I'm mentioning or thinking about are King Domino, due to the scoring mechanism. You've got a lot of similarities there. Also Cascadia with the kind of pattern building and arrangement. And another game I'm thinking of is Miyabi, where you have that, again, that vertical building as well as the spreading out. And where does this game sit between them? So to be honest, I think this game is a stronger game than King Domino. I like King Domino. I think it's a very nice entry-level game, a true entry-level game. But this one just has a bit more going on, a bit more interesting for me, just with very little rules on top of the rules of King Domino. So I think it's a good step up from that game. Now, I don't think this is quite as strong as Cascadia and Miyabi. However, I want to caveat that with saying this game does take half the amount of time to play. So, with those games, you're looking at about 45 minutes to an hour. This one, again, you're looking at 25 minutes. So I do actually think there's room to have both of them in your collection, which I do have. This is going to be a keeper for me. I find it very enjoyable. It's pleasant, and if you have that spare half an hour, but you still have some, gas in the tank to play something with some meat on the bones, then Akropolis is a good one to go for. So yeah, I think this is a very nice game. I think it's kind of an outlier really to be in my top 10 of the year. I'm that happy with it, and it's fitting this nice niche in my collection where, again, something that's puzzly, quick, enjoyable, and just a lot of fun, really. Again, nothing terribly new here, but what it does extremely well, and I am impressed. So this one is going to get a chairman's commendation, and I think the initial ranking is just going to be just outside my top 100. I think about 120-ish is where I've got it at the moment. But it'll be interesting to see where this one goes over the long haul, because it is still quite light. Each game is going to feel relatively similar, I suppose, but has it got the legs to keep staying in my top, say, 150? We shall see. But that is Akropolis.